lot of those things, and they're avoiding them, and they're following things like a cloud adoption framework and well-architected design, because otherwise that will be a lot of mistakes to make at one project.
It's easy to do a lot of mistakes with just a few clicks or just a few,
But
just
let's be honest
here. Of code for it's easily.
But let's be honest, we did make most of those mistakes before, but we learned on the project.
I think everyone started with those mistakes at the beginning and then evolved, and hopefully a lot of people now know they can reach out to the Architecture Central, to CAFWAF and all. Sessions like the one from Mustafa can be a great help. So I'm really interested in your session, by the way.
Okay, thank you. Can you see my screen already?
Yeah, it's all there. So if you want, go ahead.
Okay. So hi everyone. Thanks for sticking till the end. Just one more presentation before the party. My name is Vukašin Terzić. I work as a solution architect in a consulting company that is based in Prague. And I work with clients from Europe and US. I specialize in cloud solutions and infrastructures that are based on Microsoft technologies. But I come from the operations background. I worked with the Windows Server since even before it was called Windows Server. In my previous roles, my focus was on Active Directory and infrastructure services and Hyper-V and VMware. And I'm also a Microsoft Azure MVP. And digital nomad. My family and I are traveling full time and changing locations all the time. This year is a little bit more difficult, but we are still traveling and trying to find nice places where the weather is good, the COVID situation is not bad, and it's not limiting us. And currently we are on Malta. Oh, and I didn't turn on my camera, so that's a mistake. So here I am. Hope you can see me now. Right. So you see from my background that I love automating stuff, and I needed to start automating stuff early in the process. And I try to use PowerShell. I use all sorts of infrastructure as code tools, but I've never been a developer. And so I guess the first question here is, why am I here to tell you about the DevOps then? Well, today, the point of today's session is to cover tools and ways that how non-developers, such as me, can use those tools that are available for us in Azure DevOps Suite. And we can use them in some ways, maybe not in a way that they're meant to be used, but we can still use them and benefit from it. And I'm saying this because I want to be clear here. This is not what the DevOps philosophy is all about. DevOps philosophy originally was created as a reaction to requirement to adopt agile software development approach. That was a difficult sentence. DevOps as such is not a tool, although tools can help bring DevOps to life. It's not automation. It includes automation, a lot of automation, but it's more than that. And this philosophy was created to allow developers to deploy their code more faster and more often than before. And before we had one major version per year. Those frequent releases of new features in smaller chunks of code are changed. When the smaller chunks of code are changed, the chance to introduce bugs is also smaller. And if the bugs are found, the process of fixing them and releasing fixes is also faster. And it's not like before when we release one big version and then if something is broken there, we spend a lot of time trying to find it, and then we have to wait till a new big version is released to fix those. And when code is released with DevOps, and this is where the automated process is, you can use those automated build pipeline tools to check out the code, to compile the project, to spin up virtual testing environment where everything can be tested in automated fashion. And if successful, then code can be released to production. And so this it's like a new approach. It's helping developers bring their code and develop faster. But how we, operations people, can benefit from this philosophy? We don't develop software. We don't produce new builds every week. So the truth is that this whole DevOps idea doesn't really apply to us. And I'm sorry if you came here today and expected me to tell you the opposite. However, most of the operations people write code, right? Lots of code. This code can be scripts like PowerShell or Bash, or some infrastructure as code like ARM templates or Terraform. We write custom Azure policies, custom roles in Azure. We define desired state configurations. We automate creation of like entire environment. This can be test environment or it can be production environment that is based on, let's say, Azure Blueprint. We even write like test scenarios and use Pester and things like that. So that's a lot of code, even though we are not software developers. And we need to keep that code somewhere, versioned, if possible, and available to others as well. And we need to be able to test it somewhere else from production environment. And we also have to run it from somewhere, that code, to execute the scripts and so on. In on-premises before, that was often saved, like, I don't know, in scripts folder on the D drive on our management server, and it was executed from there. But that got more complicated if we work with different clients or have different projects or have like multi-site environment in our company. We also need to keep history of changes and have multiple versions. We need to be able to collaborate with others. And so keeping that on the D drive was not a good idea. And so, of course, the first logical step is to create a shared folder or SharePoint site or put it somewhere on the SharePoint or OneDrive. And that looked like a good idea at first, but it wasn't really optimal. And then also that doesn't help with the fact that we are still testing our code on production. Then Azure came, and we quickly learned that having just a virtual machine to run scripts is too expensive and not really necessary. So we started using tools like automation accounts, and I love automation accounts. I use them a lot. You can install modules, use webhooks, and so on. But I also discovered something better. And so Azure DevOps Suite contains many automation tools that we can use, especially if we are working with Azure already. And we like automating things with PowerShell or some other like shell. And so today I want to talk to you about those tools, how we can use them and abuse them, and not about the cultural aspect of the entire PowerShell DevOps thing, just about those tools. And oh, I forgot to switch the slide. So this was what the DevOps was about. I personally use those DevOps tools daily. I use them in a proper way in some cases, like when we work on our internal product in our company, or when I want to, let's say, build and deploy my static website, blog, and so on. So these are the proper ways of using Azure DevOps, where you like build something and then upload it and release it. But I also use it in a way that I execute my scripts, my PowerShell, my ARM templates. I execute that from the Azure DevOps tools. These are the tools we have. I'm not going to tell you now what they are for. Instead, let's go and create our first DevOps environment. And from there, I'm going to show you, and we will set up everything and run our first pipeline. And also, if you have any questions, ask them as we go. I have my notifications on, so I can hear about the question this time. And I will try to answer them. It's more when it's more related to the context, but also we should have some time in the end. So let's switch to demo. Creating Azure DevOps can be done in a couple of ways. Before, when we started, when I started using it, it was not really depending on Azure at all. It was, you didn't even need to have Azure subscription. Now it does require Azure subscription first, and to create it, or the way that we create our company now is going to dev.azure.com. And if you, oh, okay, good. And if you're here for the first time, it will ask you to create a new organization, which will look something like this. You can give it a name, and let's do that. So this is going to be, West Europe, and good. Hope I got that right. And once you create your organization, you have to create a project. Let's give it a minute. Also, Azure pipelines and some other Azure tools are currently under maintenance, and some things are not working, but it's related to agent for Mac OS, so hopefully we will not be affected by that. Right. So while we wait for this, first thing that we will have to create is a project, and project is the place that combines all of those tools that you have seen here. We get separate instance of Azure repositories, we have Azure boards, we have Azure pipelines. All of those tools will be related to that particular project that we are creating, and you get it's also like measured and built in that way. I don't know why this is taking so long, so I'm not going to cancel it, but I do have other empty company here, so let's use that instead and not waste time. So we are going to use Wookie DevOps demos, and here to create a project. The project is going to be called Ops Demo. You should always give some description to the project, but if you don't do it in this time, you can add it in the form of a Readme file that is saved in your repository later. Project obviously can be private or public, and we can choose if we want some different version control, then it's Git. Create Git. So creating a project gives us access to all of these tools. And this is the main overview page. Once we have something created, I will come back to that so we can show it. Right. First thing that you also can see here is that we have members. So if I want to invite someone to collaborate with me on this project, it's easy. I can click invite. I do have some members for free. Then we will have to pay for more members. That I will explain it a little bit later. But the first actual tool that we are interested here is a tool called boards. Right. And this is a tool that we can use to collaborate with our team. First 5 members, I think it's free. You pay for the other ones. And it's a project management system for software projects. It's optimized for software development and supports concepts like stories, bugs, Kibana boards, and more, and provides a complete system for managing that work that is related to the particular project, software development project. But we can use it to manage any kind of the project we are working on, alone or in a team, or we can use those boards to have something like to-do list. And I love using boards because it's a great place to start with Azure DevOps. I use it in collaboration for some kind of scripts and solutions that we make in our company, especially if multiple people work on multiple modules of a tool, of a software, then we can track and trace projects here. We can use it to report bugs. We can even give access to users that are using our tool and they are able to come back here and report some back to us, and then we can work with it. So for example, here I'm going to create another task that I'm going to assign to me. Nothing really interested. I should prepare the better demo probably, and that's now doing. And after we finish it, I will move it to done. But now everyone on my team can see that I'm working on this part of the project. I can give it tags. I can make, of course, this is fully customizable. I'm not going to spend too much time with this tool because it's not that interesting, but definitely it's a good tool to start working on, and you can create priorities. You can create multiple boards for multiple projects that you are working at a time, and so on. And of course, the board entire tool is not made just of boards. It has a few different components to help software teams stay organized. We don't need to use them all, obviously. I suggest you start with the tasks and issues, and keep it simple. Work items we see here, those are the heart of the boards, and those are the units of work that represent our tasks. So it can be a different type. Each of those types has a specific purpose and specific attributes. Notice that you can add, say, issue here, or a task, or create an epic project. And then you can also create sprints, which for me, when I first started using boards, I didn't know what the sprints are. And it was a little bit confusing, but I learned that that's like a common term in software development, and it refers to like predefined time to complete a set of tasks. And Azure DevOps, you can have a filtered views and so on. Sorry for having this empty demo. I wanted to I'd like to show you from beginning, from creating it. But obviously, like when this is full of different stuff, then it looks much better and it's more appealing to use. However, for me, using boards for simple things like, I don't know, working on a simple project that we have here in Azure DevOps for developing some scripts. Recent script that we did on a small project, and this was not like my colleagues from my company, but this is actually with the client in their environment, where I was preparing some kind of identity management tool that was running here in DevOps, and I was working on it, and they were able to report all the bugs and everything in it. And I really found it really good for that. I also use it to organize my time, not like a work tasks in my calendar. I obviously use my Outlook calendar for that, but I use it for example, preparing those presentations and contributions to community, to plan the sessions, to plan blog articles and so on, because it helps me having everything in one place. And even if I see, for example, that some conference is happening, then I add that as a task here saying, okay, this is happening, you need to look into it to see what you are going to listen, or if you want to submit to it or something like that. So using Azure DevOps is really useful from Azure DevOps boards, but that's not the fun part. However, if you are not going to use, or if you are not using any kind of scripts and you are not writing any code, this is as far as you can go with Azure DevOps. So probably there are other better tools for you to use to organize your time and tasks. But if you are writing code and have some codes to store, then we can continue. So Azure Repos is the next thing here. I already mentioned how problematic was before to save all this code somewhere in the servers and then keep it versioned and so on. And so logically, even like much longer before Azure DevOps, we start using some tools like Git and GitHub. And of course, in the big organizations, this can be like a hosted service that they have it on their on-premises environment. For smaller companies, smaller teams, using GitHub was great back then. Now you can use GitHub, of course, as a full solution for enterprises. And Azure DevOps works great with the GitHub, but it also provides like source control that you get here for free. And this source control allows us to keep a history of the code, to allow easier collaboration. We can create our own repository, create folders, synchronize them, use Git tools exactly as we are used to with the GitHub. But Azure DevOps, of course, works with the GitHub, works with the Visual Studio Teams services, or other services like that. Using Azure Repos is really convenient because it's already here, it's already part of our project, and it's based on Microsoft identities, so it's easier to share it with within the same company by using the same Azure AD. That's one of the reasons, for example, and if the company doesn't have the, let's say, GitHub, then this is a place where everything can start. So when we created a new project, we already got a repo set up for us. And of course, we can connect it to our environment. We can connect it to our VS Code. If I do this now, it will ask me to create the folder and connect it to VS Code. And then every time I commit my code, it will be automatically uploaded here. However, you cannot see anything here because we don't have any files yet. So we can either upload the file from my computer and push it, or I can initialize it here with the Readme file, which I'm going to do right now, because for the purpose of this demo it's enough. And now I have a Readme file, which now shows here as about the project. So I can, of course, or actually it doesn't yet. I have to select it, right? And this is a very good way to start, because usually when you create a project and you have a README file that either on GitHub or somewhere else, you put all the info about that project in that file or about the task that you are using. So having it here helps everyone understand what the project is about. Going back to repos, now we can see our file structure. And basically, because it was already created for us, we only had to start using it. And here we can save our scripts. If you're writing PowerShell, if you're writing anything else, you can save it here. This is a great place to save ARM templates. This is a great place to save your YAML file, which will come in a second. But also you can save like images, documents. It's basically a file repository, right? Use your imagination. For me personally, I stopped using GitHub some time ago because I started using DevOps much more. And it was for me more natural to have my code that was mostly Azure related in my Azure DevOps. And also because I was constantly testing it and using it, and I didn't have to share it so much. So you can see my GitHub contribution history is basically 0 in the last year or so. And it's because I commit most of my code in Azure Repos. However, I will be going back to GitHub because I want to test their DevOps tools as well. So that's not something that I would recommend you right now to go and turn off the GitHub and switch everything to Azure Repos. But if you are using Azure DevOps, it's a good place to have your things, your code, but it's not necessary. And as I will show you in a second, it's completely supported, and you can have everything saved in your GitHub and use it in the same way. So that's about Azure Repos. And, of course, you can see here all the things that you're used to, like commits, pushes, branches, pull requests. Everything works here exactly as you're used to. And now, next and most interesting part is Azure pipelines. So what the Azure pipeline is, before we create, to elaborate that a little. Let's try this in a simple way. Azure Pipeline gives us access to create automation tool and it would be like shame not to use it. You can imagine this is a place where you create some kind of task or series of tasks, multiple tasks, and then execute it in a container that is automatically provisioned for you. And we can run our code directly from the pipeline or from a script that is saved as file or multiple files, and pipeline can call that and execute that. Right? So I hope that's the easy explanation. Oh, right. Here, as you can see that some services are impacted, but it should be okay for us. When creating a pipeline, of course, you can use already existing pipeline. It's asking you where is your code that we will work with, and it can be GitHub, as I mentioned. It can even be GitHub Enterprise Server. It can be Bitbucket. I'm going to use, obviously, Azure Repos Git because that's already here. I don't have to authenticate, use anything else. Also, what's happening here now is that we are going to create YAML pipeline, which is basically a code written in YAML, and it's not the graphical one. If you still want to use the classic editor to create a graphical pipeline, which doesn't require creating any code, but you just connect the dots, then that can be done from here. I actually found that really limiting at first when I started using it, and I quickly convert to YAML. Right, so now we are selecting repository, configuring the pipeline. And if you take a look here, there are many pipelines that are already predefined and already created for you. So you don't have to create it from the beginning. And you can find many more on places like GitHub. I'm going to start now with a starter pipe, not existing YAML file, but just starter pipeline. And now we have our first pipeline, which is not saved yet. We will have to save it in a minute. My personal experience with YAML, let's go over that first. I tried in a fashion of trial and error. I never tried, or in the beginning, I didn't try to learn it properly and read documentation, but I actually started typing something and tried to find how it works. And it was very difficult. I don't recommend anyone to go and take that path because coming from PowerShell and ARM and so on, it was very difficult for me to learn something where each space makes a difference. Or, for example, differences like different types of quotes or different usage when you are using Linux or Windows, because sometimes you have slash like this, sometimes you have slash like this. And all of those small things that took me ages to figure it out and a lot of failed runs. But if I went and read documentation, it would be much easier. And since I started, documentation got much better. Even like on Microsoft Learn, you can find a lot of examples and a lot of guides. And there is like other third-party documentation that covers a lot of YAML. And I think everyone should start with that, not like me. So what we have here is a starter pipeline, and running a code in a pipeline is a similar like running a code on your computer or on management station, but there are some things happening here that are not automatically happening when you run your code from your computer. And for example, for me, I think the biggest benefit of running a code in a pipeline is documentation. Everything gets documented automatically on the background. Each run, we know what code version was run on, when it was executed. We know on which version of scripting tool, like PowerShell or operating system, we did it. We know which dependencies we used, such as like modules and their versions. We know what was the outcome of the script. We see the whole output. We can even use it like the Azure DevOps to store our logs that comes out of that script and the temporary files. And this is there for you. You run your code, you get all of this for free in the background. Building that kind of documentation for your script will take you ages. And it will be difficult to maintain. And every time you change something in the script, you will have to take care of that as well. And here you get it, happens for you for free. You don't have to worry about it. Great tool. Then what's great about it is that it can be scheduled. So you can run it as it is here. For example, here we have a trigger that's connected to our main branch in our repository. And I really like this. It was changed here as well. Before it was called master. Now it's called main. And of course, that broke some pipeline, but it's okay. Every time I change and commit some code that goes here in my repository, this pipeline will run automatically. That's called continuous integration. We can completely disable that. I can go and disable that integration. It will not be based or it will not be executed automatically on the change in the code, which will be case for some software development. But for us, for example, we want to run this on a schedule. I can go easily and schedule this run, and then don't worry about if I update code, it's not going to run automatically. And this is a great tool to use when you have to run things on schedule, or when you run a script on a specific version of operating system. Like here, you can see that in our pool, we have VM image Ubuntu latest. So this is going to give us the latest version of Ubuntu that is available in Azure. And that changes time to time because new versions are coming. We can specify if we want some specific version of Ubuntu. Or it doesn't have to be Ubuntu, it can be Windows. Or it can be Mac OS. And so, for example, you're building PowerShell module, which is my case, and you want to be sure that it works on older versions of PowerShell, like on Windows Server 2008, or even the Mac OS. And testing that at home or at company will mean that you will have to create a lot of different virtual machines and maintain them just to be able to test the code on them. You can do that here in DevOps. Or should I say, you can let the DevOps do that for you for free. Basically, you can choose which image is going to run, and it's going to create a virtual machine in the background that will execute your code, and that virtual machine is going to be on that specific version you set. And for me, that's a huge benefit. Like maintaining Windows Server 2008 just because I need to make sure that my module runs on it will be a huge pain. Here it's not. I just create an extra task and that's it. Right. Also, Azure DevOps is running a code in Azure DevOps is also great for wrapping up like different parts of your workflow, like combining your scripting language of choice with something else, like ARM templates or Terraform in one workflow. It's also great for things like Azure Governance. I use it for running tools like AZ GovViz. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, which is a great tool for looking into your Azure Governance. And I have it, I started using that recently, but I have it in my pipeline and it's executed from there. So you can see it's powerful, gives us some options. So now let's take a look what we have here and how we can run our code, because so far you're just looking at the empty screen. Right, so we explained the trigger, we explained the pool. I can easily write here Windows latest, and then we have some steps. In first step here, you can see that our script can be executed as like inline script. This step here will basically call a hello world, and that's it, right? It's going to call bash hello world. This one here is a multi-line script, and it's going to write 2 lines instead of 1 because it's a multi-line script. How does that work? Well, it supports Azure DevOps supports all different kinds of shells and scripts, scripting languages, and for example, we can write in Bash, Batch, or PowerShell. They're fully supported. Instead of hello world, I can just write here, write, and it's the same thing is going to happen here as well. And then we can also have a different way. Oops, sorry about that. We can have a different way, and I'm going to speed it up because I just realized we are running out of time. We can also execute scripts. And this script or the script line or file can be saved somewhere in our repository. And when we run it, it's going to call that script and execute that script. And that's great because for me, what was the biggest benefit is that when you actually create something on your computer where you have all sorts of dependencies and things in your script, then it works. But then you share it with someone else, and that someone else tells you, okay, it doesn't work for me. Right? We all seen that memes, it works on my computer, right? So that's the same thing here. And because here you are running it every time on an empty, clean computer, you can also use custom image, but not going to go into that part now. Let's say we run it every time on a custom, or sorry, on a clean computer. That means that in your script, installing modules, right? You work with the Azure, you need AZ module. Well, you have to install it because every time you run it, it's a new, fresh container. Also, I forgot to mention with PowerShell, you can choose which version of PowerShell you want to use. So, for example, you can use Windows PowerShell, and that will work only if you have Windows container here. Sorry, Windows image. And if you don't have Windows, if you have Linux or Mac, then you will be able to use PowerShell or PowerShell Core. And then you can select specific version of which you want to use. Right, so that's another thing about PowerShell. And let's just try to create one task. I'm going to try to speed this up now. So to explain what are the tasks, tasks are basically building blocks of Azure DevOps pipelines. There are many built-in tasks. We can also download other tasks via extensions, extension marketplace. I'm most familiar with PowerShell, and I was giving that all as examples, so I'm going to do that here. You can see that here we can run PowerShell, or Azure PowerShell, or even PowerShell on a target machine. I'm going to explain that in a minute. So first thing you have to think is, where is your cursor? Then you click this, and then you can say, if I want a file path or inline PowerShell. We don't have any script now, so I'm not going to use that. Inline PowerShell will create something like this. And then you add task, and it creates task for you. Right? And you can have multiple of those tasks. One example I was giving before was that I have a customer where we have identity management. So in that identity management part, what I have here in this pipeline is first, of course, installing some modules. Then I will connect the pipeline to a Key Vault. I will download my keys from like identity that I need to use to manage the Azure Active Directory and Office 365. I will load that identity credentials. Then I will execute my script, which is running all sorts of like cleaning and maintenance of Azure AD accounts. And then later on, I would save those files and like source files and so on into somewhere into storage account and upload that in the storage account. So I have that for later for reviewing if there are any errors or if I have to look into the logs. And then when that's completed, this whole container, when the task run is finished, this whole container gets deleted and destroyed. So Let's try to save and run this very, very simple pipeline. So you can see now it's in the queue, and it's going to run shortly. With this free version, we only have one parallel task that we can run. All right, you got the warning here that see that the Ubuntu latest is going to switch to a different version. So now the task is queued, and we have some error here. Right. That I didn't change the. I changed that echo to PowerShell, but I didn't actually specify that it's going to be a PowerShell. So you see that this is the first error, and you saw that it was documented. So instead of that, I'm going to go back to my pipelines, just quickly fix that. Oh, and I had double quotes. Maybe that was. Okay, save. You should see my production pipeline. That's hell. All right, so let's run it again. And you can see it's going to commit this save to the main. And now it's going to run. We have another queue job. I just want to show you the documentation we get for it. So right now we can see that on which image is run, which pipeline. You will see that in a second. You get everything here. The version of agent, version of image, what version of PowerShell, or no, this is the tasks version, which means that the task that we selected, so this was the name. We check out our code. Basically, it got our code from our Git repository. It executed first task. Here is the result. We can also see which version of the command line and on which operating system was it. We can also see here. Then we can see here in PowerShell which version. We know that it's a PowerShell because we can even get to the file, and then like this is the checkout, of course, of the documentation. And of course, if I included in my script, if I included things like upload or download something or save it somewhere, that's a lot of free things that we get here and that we would never have if we just run that script on our computer. Like if you go back 6 months later and you remember something worked, but right now it's not working, you don't know on which version of the operating system you were or which, I don't know, PowerShell you had at that time. So a lot of things, and you can see here that those tasks that we created, each of them had some name, and you can of course change those names and follow this process on how it runs. Right. So that's very, very simple, let's say, very simple demonstration of how you can use the Azure DevOps, especially Azure DevOps pipelines to execute your code. And for me, this changed a lot of things because I'm now using this a lot. And whenever I have to run some script that is scheduled, that requires some extra dependencies, that is even like complicated and has to work with Azure, with things like I don't know, like building environments, I always do it here because this pipeline is a great place where you can combine all of those tasks. And I'm even like building, I don't know, SharePoint farm in one task. And then when that's completed, I'm doing something else on that SharePoint and so on. So great tool, great place to start. Not very difficult to start. I believe that everyone can learn YAML, especially if you already work with like a JSON and a PowerShell or something like that, then YAML shouldn't be a problem for you. It requires a lot of patience, but it's not a problem. Okay. So I do have one more slide here in the presentation, and that's about the pricing. So the pipelines, that's the great thing about it, is that basically for each project that we create, we get 30 hours per month of free running one parallel task. So if you have something on schedule and that task runs every day and it takes 15 minutes, then there is no way you are going to use all your free time per month. You also get 2 GB of free space in Azure Artifacts, and each other gigabyte is something like $2. So it's also not very expensive, and you can use Azure Artifacts as a location where you can save those logs, for example, where all the information about each run is. Maybe I should have showed you that. So if I look at this job, oh, I didn't upload any artifacts. But if I did, I would be able to download them from here immediately and see all the code and everything that was actually run at the time. You also get first 5 users for free. So if many people need to collaborate on that, you can purchase extra users. There are also different licenses for people like they are not technical, like project management and stakeholders and so on. And so for those reasons, there is no reason for anyone not to be using this. And that's all I have in this presentation. Right, so do we have any questions?
There were some in the chat, Vukašin, but I think there was a question about just a small question. As I'm not very familiar with all of this, I think I heard about GitHub getting more features that can supplement Azure DevOps.
Yeah, so yes, that's completely right, because a lot of people, or even like GitHub is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft is investing in GitHub a lot, and there was just like huge GitHub conference where they revealed a lot of new things and a lot of new features, and that's the reason I said that I will be going back to GitHub, because I really think. And I even liked how the pipelines and everything work from there. I even maybe like it more than Azure, but still I don't have too much experience with it yet. And GitHub was always a place for not just for developers, but for everyone. And because it was not specifically DevOps tool, but it was tool for version control. And now I think that this is not competition. Azure DevOps is not competing with GitHub. For us, for end users, this is like just more tools that we can use and try to use in a way that is good for us. And I'm not saying you should go one way or another. Great thing about it is that Azure DevOps works well with the GitHub, and GitHub works well with performing your tasks in Azure, like deploying JSONs or deploying ARM templates or policies from GitHub to Azure works well as well.
It's all integrated. It's all Microsoft in some way.
Yeah.
So it all works with each other, and yeah, something you better do in this one, the other thing you do better in the other one. So yeah, you have options, but yeah.
Yeah.
I think at the moment they're a lot focusing on GitHub also, I think. Really,
yeah, I also think so.
Yeah, but I think does someone else have a question for Vukašin at the moment? There was still one in the chat. Someone was mentioning why not use Planner or Task as it's included in Teams instead of boards.
Right. Nothing against that. Planner is a great tool. It's a problem when you have, like for me, that would be a problem because I have multi-tenants, multi-companies, and so on. But of course, to collaborating with colleagues in a way that we need to collaborate with the colleagues, Planner, Tasks, and Teams is great. However, if you are really like a software developer and working on a software project, then you need those software development specific things, then the Azure DevOps boards is the place to be. And I don't need that for all of those. I don't use any of those extra functionalities. I just use it to plan it. But I like how it looks like, and I like it's on my identity, where I have my Azure subscription, where I have the things that I actually use and execute in the Azure DevOps, and it's one place where I go and find everything. My code, my planning, and my executing the code, everything from one place.
Okay. I think that were all the questions in the chat for the moment. Does anyone else has a question for Vukašin at the moment? You can ask it by yourself if you want. You can unmute and just ask it.
Yeah, definitely. Or even if you start trying and playing with it, then if you run into a problem, go on Twitter, find me, and let me know. I'll try to help.
Yeah.
Did get.
So yeah, thanks for great presentation. Indeed, it was a great presentation. So yeah, everybody is thanking you. So
Thank you.
From our side, also thank you for a great session, and even at this late time. So thank you.
No problem.
It was our pleasure hosting you.
It was my pleasure being here. Thank you. And I was looking forward to for this session for a long time, but it got a little bit busy. I actually just finished the meeting at 9 and then joined like.
I think a lot of people are in the same situation at the moment. It seems like COVID is making everybody work in IT until double hours or something. But
exactly, like
especially we hope the holidays will change the situation, but we'll see. But once again, thank you for a great session, and thank you for your time. We appreciate it. So thank you.
I did as well, and hope to see you in this way again, or some different session, or in some different.
Yeah, hope so.
Evening.
We see each other a lot on Twitter and stuff, in the Cloud family, in the Azure family. But I think it's the first time we see each other in
I think so.
In a virtual event, in a video chat. But great to see you.
Great to see you too. Hopefully, sometime next year we will be able to attend some.
Let us hope. I think Didier, are you still in the session?
I'm still here.
I think he's thinking the same.
Yeah, it's a bit.
He wants to go to the US, I think.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, I just received the email today about the MVP summit.
That was already known. Yeah, it gave us a little hope for 2 weeks, and then they already changed it. It's weird. 2 years in a row. It's weird.
Well, it is. But I think like it's a good choice still for this year. Hopefully they will change it back. They will change it back soon. Like it's not going to keep. They're not going to keep it this way. All those ignites and.
It depends on how the world. I mean, there's a lot of talk about companies really reevaluating travel costs, and is it really necessary? And the question is, what will they cut first? Business travel they can do remotely, or conferences, right?
Right.
We'll stop the recording, so everyone who wants to join the talk, just join. Take a drink. Wait, I will first stop the recording, and everybody can talk if you want.
It's going to be interesting to see